Welcome to South Florida saltwater fishing. I'm Heath, and it's time to get into the bite.
Dolphin in the boat.
Woo! Double-headed solo kingfish trip right there.
Let's
do this. Let's do this.
That's mutton snapper right there, baby.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Have you ever heard your fishing buddies or your friends say they're going to go out wreck fishing and kind of caught your attention? You said, hey, I might want to get into that. But you just didn't have any clue of how to find wrecks or even how to get started or what to do to even get you going. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to find these wrecks and the fundamentals and what it takes to produce fish and have a good day when wreck fishing. Before we get into this though, if you want to learn more about fishing, grow as an angler, or just see some great and exciting offshore fishing adventures, you can start by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss a thing. So I want to start off by saying that wreck fishing takes time to learn. It is definitely not an overnight process where you say, hey, I'm going out wreck fishing and you're going to kill it. It doesn't happen. It takes time. You have to figure out how to find the wrecks. You have to put the numbers in your GPS and then you actually have to go and find them. Then you have to do your research and discovery and figure out which wrecks actually hold fish versus which wrecks don't. You also have to figure out what time of year or what time of day certain wrecks are having a better bite than other ones. Like I said, it's a process. It doesn't just happen automatically. You have to put in the time and the effort to figure these things out. Once you do, you will be able to start producing fish more often than not. I have to caution you. The one thing that I can guarantee you about wreck fishing is that nothing is ever guaranteed. You can have the perfect conditions, you can have your wreck and know where your fish are lying on it, the perfect bait, everything, and still catch nothing. Nothing is ever guaranteed when you are fishing a wreck. You also need to understand that wrecks are part of the reef system. The reef is where all life in the ocean begins. At some point during most species' lives, they end up on the reef feeding, and they are part of the life cycle of the ocean. Wrecks are just what is considered an artificial part of the reef, and they house many, many species and form life for the ocean, and thus bring fishermen to it. As I said, there are many species to be caught on the wrecks that are all over, literally littering the ocean floor off the east coast of South Florida. There are snappers, mutton snappers, yellowtail snappers, yellow eye snappers. There are mackerel, king mackerel. There's amberjack. There's tuna. There's bonita. Bonita are very abundant around wrecks. You can catch cobia. There's African pompano. And there's grouper. All these species make home on the wrecks. Along with the guarantee of no guarantee when it comes to wreck fishing is the impossibility of saying I'm going out to target this fish. You can't say I'm going to go out and target mutton snapper on a wreck, this specific wreck, this day. You could go out and they might not be biting. You might catch nothing but African pompano or grouper, or you might catch nothing. Targeting a specific fish is virtually impossible on a wreck when you do it. So you always have to be prepared to adjust your tactics or whatever you may be going after depending upon what is giving the bite. Wrecks are literally all over up and down the coast of Florida. They're out deep, they're in shallow. Each one holds its different species. At different times of the day they have different bites. Each wreck is different every day. There are many different ways to fish a wreck. So I want to start out with what I consider to be more fishing around the wreck and fishing the wreck, which is the two ways. One is trolling and the other one is kite fishing. Now granted, you're finding structure and you're fishing the structure, which is the wreck, but like I said, it's more fishing around the wreck than it is actually fishing the wreck. In this episode, we're going to concentrate on particularly fishing the wreck with two methods. One is anchoring and chumming, and the other one is drifting. Any average fisherman can go stop over a wreck, hook up their anchor, pull it tight, drop down their line, and catch any number of grunts, catch any number of blue runners, and have a successful fun day. That is not what we are here to learn about. In this video, we're here to learn about how to produce quality fish off these wrecks. The snapper, the cobia, the pompano, the amberjack, the mackerel. To be able to even begin wreck fishing, you have to learn your electronics. You're going to need to understand your GPS. You're going to have to know how to plug in coordinates of these wrecks. And if they are public spots, they should already automatically be in your GPS so that you can find them. But still, you have to be able to understand coordinates and how to navigate, set a track or a route to the spot and head to it. You will also need to understand how to use your fish finder to locate the wreck once you are over it. Most wrecks stand up as relief structure off the bottom. Not all electronics show wrecks and relief structure the same. For example, I had an older fish finder from Garmin that would show the relief structure almost as if it was part of the bottom. My new Garmin fish finder, it shows it almost as if it is a phantom image showing up in the water column. Given it some time, I've learned how to identify what is relief structure with my new fish finder versus the old one that I was used to. Once you've learned how to find the wreck that you would like to start doing your research on, you have to understand that not all wrecks hold fish. Most wrecks are publicly located spots. They're in your GPS, you can find them, you can go to them. Some have been way overfished. Some see non-stop action from divers and snorkelers and boat traffic. Some are down near Fort Lauderdale, near the port, and there's huge freighters that anchor on the reefs near them, and they have the non-stop pressure created by humans and outside influences, which tends to spook fish and scare them away and make the artificial reef aspect of it unappealing to the fish. If you are just getting into wreck fishing and you go to one of your spots that you have located in your GPS, you've entered the coordinates, you head out, and you go there and you're finding that you're not finding a wreck, it is very possible. This is the concept of what's called a phantom wreck. It more than likely was there at one time, but with technology advancements, more accurate GPS coordinates being entered into a public system, outside influences, hurricanes, who knows what may have happened. The wreck might have moved. There's also the time factor. If it's a wooden wreck, it may have disintegrated over the years and not really be the wreck relief structure that you were looking for. Just bear that in mind when you are beginning to go out on your journey of adding spots into your GPS. Not every one of them is going to be a home run. Now we're going to get into how to fish wrecks. So to begin with, what I want to do is I want to talk about anchoring up and chumming. Very important when you're anchoring and chumming to know where your wreck is. You're going to want to be up current of it. If you're not up current of your wreck, if your wreck's here, your current's going this way, you're parked right over the wreck, all of your chum is doing nothing but going out behind the wreck, and it's going to be a rough day. You're going to catch nada, nothing, zilch, because you're not enticing the fish to come up they don't even know you're chumming because your chum is going, spreading out behind the wreck and going over the sand. If your wreck is here, your current is going this way, you want to be up current of the wreck, dropping your chum bag so that your little pieces of debris, food, oils, and everything come out and go over the wreck. And when you drop out your bait, it drifts down into the current, to the wreck, to the fish. When you're anchored up and you're chumming, there's a couple different ways that produce fish. The first one is live baiting. You can get you a nice large live bait like a bonita and hook in a stinger rig. You can get you a nice pilchard or a sardine, hook them through the nose, flat line them out. Also known as free lining. What this is just no weight on your hook and you let the fish swim. The commotion draws in the predators that will be feeding on the fish that are feeding on the chum. The next way is using a knocker rig, which is a hook and a sinker that free floats on your line, not tied anywhere, and the sinker can almost go right straight down to your hook, and you let that drift out. You hook that up with a silver side or a sardine and you toss it in the current and you let it drift down with the chum down to where the fish are feeding. The next is my go-to way, my favorite way of fishing any wreck, whether I'm drifting or whether I'm anchored and chumming like we're talking about right now. This is the mutton rig, which is a sinker that is weighted for the depth that you are in. So the shallower you're in, the smaller the sinker. The deeper you're in, the larger the sinker. And that is hooked up to a 20 to 30 foot leader of fluorocarbon with a single J hook or a circle hook on the other end, whatever you may want. And the concept of this is you drop your bait in, your sinker sinks down faster than your bait, and your bait slowly drifts down with the current, not outpacing the chum, and falls in line to where the fish are feeding on the chum. Now I want to show you an example of how to hook up and rig a mutton rig. To do the mutton rig setup, it's very simple. We're going to need a few things. You need a cutting tool. I use a size 7 barrel swivel. This is from Mustad. You can use any one, any manufacturer. Works good. Size 1/0 sinker. Remember, the shallower you go, the lighter this sinker needs to be. You need to use the lightest possible sinker you can. A 3/0 octopus style hook from Mustad. I've got the 25 to 30 feet of fluorocarbon leader. This particular leader is from Seagar Red Label. It's the one I like. It's the most pliable. It knots easily and it's not real abrasive when you tie it onto your terminal tackle or thread it onto your main line. And we're going to need our main line from our reel. We are going to start with our main line from our reel to make the mutton rig. The first thing we'll do is we're going to thread our sinker. We're going to let the sinker float freely. You never want to tie your sinker onto your line. It creates an abrasion point. You always want an egg sinker to flow freely. After the sinker, we are going to hook on our barrel swivel. We hook this on with a basic clinch knot. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to use 5 wraps. Tighten that up. Make sure your knots are good. If your knots aren't good, you will want to retie them. The last thing you want to do is go out targeting a fish and have knot failure. Next thing we will do is we will take one end of our fluorocarbon and we're going to attach it to the swivel, again using a clinch knot. Trim off your tag. The final step of making the mutton rig is to hook on your hook to the other end of your leader. Another basic clinch knot.
And our mutton rig is done.
The next way to fish a wreck is drifting over it. Again, you're always going to want to start up current. If you start your fishing right over your wreck and your current's going this way and you start right over it, you're gonna end up behind the wreck by the time your bait gets down to the bottom. And again, you're gonna catch nothing. Always up current. So your wreck's here. If your current is going this way, you want to be up current. That way you drift over it. You drift down. You let your bait down to it. Now again, when it comes to drifting, you have to do your research. Are the fish on this side of the wreck? Are the fish on that side of the wreck? If the wreck is long ways, are they more at this end or are they more at that end of the wreck? This is where your homework comes into play, learning the spot. And again, nothing's guaranteed. They might not be there that day. So when it comes to drifting, again, there's flat lining out live bait, dropping down knocker rig. And then there's my favorite, of course, which is the mutton rig. There's also vertical jigging. What I want to do is I'm going to show you a quick example of vertical jigging, hooking up with a nice size amberjack and pulling them up. We're hooked up. That's as easy as that.
Here comes my fish. Big old amberjack, look at that. Big old AJ. You get him in the boat, or start get them.
Vertical jigging, you can also pull up bonitas non-stop at a certain time of year, which happens to be the summer months, late summer months of like June and July. They will eat vertical jigs all day long.
Alright. Bonita on the vertical jig.
And so that's drifting for you. Now, what I want to talk about is the inevitability of getting hung up on the wreck. It's going to happen. If you fish wrecks, you're going to hook the wreck eventually. If anyone has ever told you that they've never hooked the wreck and they fish wrecks all the time, they're lying. First thing that happens is you hook a fish and its natural instinct is to run for cover. It doesn't think of where it wants to go. It just turns and runs and bolts for the nearest protective piece of structure, rock, whatever. If you're on a wreck, the first thing the fish is going to do is they're going to bolt for the wreck. So, you being the angler, your initial thing that you have to do once you get the hookup is get the fish away from the wreck. Otherwise, you're going to get hooked into the wreck. If you get rocked up, which is what they call it, even though you're hooked into the wreck, what you'll want to do is you're going to want to release your bail. Put your rod into free spool, let some slack out. Not all the times, but a good portion of the times, once the fish feels the release of the pressure, it will come out of hiding and go and start to take off again. Once you feel the takeoff and the pulling of the line, that's when you come tight on your line again and you try your best to get the fish away from the structure. And then there are those times where you just happen to have let down in the perfect spot and your bait drifts onto the wreck and you're going in the current and it hooks onto the wreck. Part of wreck fishing is inevitably getting hooked into the wreck. You're going to lose some hardware. It happens. I want to give you some specific wrecks that you can go and hunt down for yourself. These ones happen to be my favorite. They're off Boca Raton and out of Pompano Beach. So out of the Boca Inlet, I want to talk about two wrecks that I like to fish. The first one is a very popular wreck. It is called the Hydro Atlantic. It's just to the south of the inlet, about 1.5 miles off the shoreline. It sits in 165 feet of water. The next wreck I want to talk about is the NOULA Express. It also sits near a couple of other small wrecks and a small submarine, which are the Sea Emperor and the United Caribbean. But the NOULA is the bigger of the relief structures right around there. It sits in 70 feet of water, and it is approximately, it's about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile, again, just south of the Boca Inlet. So to assist you with finding these, down in the description, I'm going to leave you the GPS coordinates of these wrecks. So you plug those into your chart plotter and hit go to, and it should be able to direct you exactly to where these wrecks are, and you look for a relief structure, and you'll be able to start fishing them. Now I want to show you an example of catching a jumbo size African pompano off the Hydro Atlantic wreck.
Here I am hooked up on the wreck. Good fish. Big old African pompano. Oh yeah. That's a beast right there.
The next wreck I want to talk about is down off Pompano Beach, just south of the Hillsborough Inlet. Now, there's an area called the Rodeo site. It is literally littered with over 20 wrecks in a several square mile area. Now, my favorite wreck to fish over there is called the Rodeo. It's in about 125 feet of water. And again, I'm going to give you the exact GPS coordinates of this, even though it's public numbers, but it'll give you a head start on plugging them into your GPS so that you can go and find it. Again, relief structure, you're going to have to look for it and be able to find it. It's not a free thing. You're going to have to do your research and your homework and figure out which way the current's going and all that in order to be able to discover exactly where the wrecks are. But the coordinates I'm going to give you will give you a head start. Now I want to show you a short clip catching large mutton snapper off the Pompano Rodeo.
Oh, there we go. We got him. He's on. All right. Here it comes. See what we got. Oh, big old mutton. Whoa. Big old mutton. Oh, yeah. That's mutton snapper right there, baby.
That is what you call an excellent start today. That's a good solid 10-pound mutton snapper. When I caught this large mutton snapper, I was drifting. One thing to remember when you're fishing a wreck, it's very important because you're going with the current. You always want to consistently let out line, let out line, let out line. You don't ever want to stop letting out line, because what this will do is your bait's drifting down in the current and then it stops and then it starts going with the current. This looks entirely unnatural. It will drive fish away. It will decrease your hookup ratio. What you are looking for is a natural presentation in your bait. So you're always letting out line, consistently let out line, wait for the fish to yank the line out of your hand that you're free lining out, and then you slam your bell shut and you come tight on the fish. Alright, I want to talk about the baits that I like to use for wreck fishing. I like to use silver sides, Spanish sardines. Both of these come frozen from bait shops. They're great baits. You can turn the sardine into a sardine plug. It does great. The mushier, not so much the better, but when it is a mushier bait after being frozen and thawed a couple of times, the fish can actually slurp it up and inhale it in one gulp and you're good to go. Some people don't like the mushy factor. Other people like more fresh bait. Cool. If you are into catching fresh bait and spending a portion of your day catching bait, more power to you. Other baits are bonita. You can catch them, and there you have your fresh bait. Mullet. Bust out your cast net, catch you some mullet, you're good to go. Mullet is a great bait. We have a mullet run that comes off the east coast of South Florida annually around the months of August to November. Mullet come in the millions, so get your fill up your freezer, you're good to go. Ballyhoo. Off the east coast of Florida, there is no shortage of ballyhoo. Set yourself up on a shallow reef, drop in your chum bag. The ballyhoo should come to your boat by the hundreds. Toss in your cast net, catch them. You can either throw them right in your ice bucket or keep them alive, fish with them live. Ballyhoo is some of the essential bait when it comes to catching bait and using fresh bait in South Florida. There's also the sabiki rig. You can go and catch sardines, cigar minnows, pilchards, any of that stuff up off the shallow beaches, and then you can head out and go do your wreck fishing. Now I want to talk about time of day to fish a wreck. For me personally, when I say, hey, I'm going to go start researching this wreck and learning the ins and outs of it, I normally like to give the morning time a shot first. 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Usually after that, if it's a morning time wreck, it shuts off. However, there are wrecks that are very active at night. There are wrecks that are active at dusk. Those wrecks might not have anything during the morning and the daytime. So it all depends upon the angler, when you like going out, when you like fishing, and have you done your homework enough to figure out what time of day the fish feed best on what particular wreck? And are you willing to do the work to go to it and get to it at that time? Another key factor to be aware of when you are fishing wrecks, particularly in the later months of the year, November, December, sharks and barracudas. They live on the wrecks and they eat everything that you want to catch and eat too. There's giant tiger sharks, there's hammerheads, there's barracudas that are upwards of 6 feet long. They're gonna eat what is on the other end of your line if you don't get it up quick enough. And regardless, if you are quick enough, more than likely sometimes they're still gonna get to it. There's lots of sharks and they're eating everything you got and you're coming up with nothing but a head of a mutton snapper every time. It's probably time to say, wreck fishing isn't gonna happen today. Let's move on and try something different. If you want to go shark fishing and it's those months, get yourself a small bullet bonita, butterfly it, take out the spine, drop it down, bring your biggest, heftiest, most muscular friend who thinks he is tougher than Hercules, put him on a giant tiger shark, see how tough he is then. So when it comes to fishing wrecks, the one thing you have to remember is that the deeper the wreck does not necessarily mean the bigger the fish. I've caught plenty of large sized fish in shallower wrecks and I've caught smaller fish on deeper wrecks. So just bear that in mind. It all has to do with putting in the work to find what fish are where. And again, it's fishing. So on any given day, any given time, that monster of a fish could be there. Now I want to talk about the gear that I use when I am fishing wrecks. I use both spinner class and conventional reels. On the lighter side of the spinner reels, I use a Penn Spinfisher V 5500. This is spooled with 12-pound Momoy, and I use about a 7 to 8 foot leader of Seaguar Red Label 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is on a Penn Battalion rod rated 12 to 20-pound class. On the medium to heavier side of the spinning gear, I use a Penn Spinfisher 8500 spooled with 20-pound smoke blue Momoy line, or I have a black and gold 60 from Nuala. My pen is on a 7-foot star rod from the Paraflex series. The Nuala is on a 6'6" custom Chaos rod. The next type of reels that I use are conventional reels. I got two different ones that I like to use. The first one is a Penn International 12H. I got this spooled with 20-pound pink Andy line. It is on a 7-foot star rod from the Handcrafted series. The next conventional reel that I use is from Accurate. It is a Boss Fury 600N, which means it's narrow. This is also on a 7-foot star rod from the Handcrafted series. Now this one I use a lot for jigging. So it is loaded with 30-pound braid, 900 yards of it. And I have a 50-foot top shot of 30-pound monofilament leader on it. When approaching your wreck, take the time. Position your boat properly. Take 5-10 minutes. Do one drift. Don't even pick up a rod. Figure out what the current's doing with you. Is your boat spinning because of wind and because of current at the same time? Current's going this way, wind's going this way. Your boat's going to spin as you're drifting. Is your boat doing a big circle? Always pay attention to what is going on. When you're anchoring, you want to let out enough line so that you can pull some in or let some more out, so that you can position your boat properly according to your current and your current speed. Remember, the more time you take to understand the environment as opposed to the site you're fishing, you're only increasing the odds of having a better fishing experience. Alright folks, that about does it for this episode. Hope you had fun, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned a little bit about how to fish wrecks. Till next time. South Florida saltwater fishing, going wherever the cool wind takes us.